in the staring contest between the Chinese government and Donald J. Trump, with the world's economy hanging in the balance, Donald Trump appears to have blinked first. News breaking today that the U.S. and China are reducing tariffs for 90 days. After talks in Switzerland over the weekend, the Trump administration is now lowering tariffs on Chinese goods to 30% from the rate Trump had set, which was 145%. The Chinese government is lowering tariffs on American products to 10%. Now, that 30% number on goods from China is still higher than what it was before Trump came to town, but it is a significant drawdown from the current rate. News of the reprieve in the trade war started by Trump sent markets soaring. The Dow Jones today closing up more than 1,000 points. Trump called the cut in tariffs a, quote, great reset. His press secretary went further, calling it, quote, an extraordinary first step in the right direction. But let's be clear about what happened here. Donald Trump started a trade war, and Donald Trump blinked in the war he started. New York Times writes it like this, quote, in a research note, Mark Williams, chief Asia economist for Capital Economics, said the agreement was, quote, another substantial retreat from the Trump administration's aggressive stance, because it does not include any commitments by China on its currency or trade imbalances. In other words, Trump got no assurances that China would work to fix the reason Trump imposed the tariffs in the first place. That is, ostensibly, the country's trade deficit with China. Now, Charles Gasparino, he's a reporter over at Fox News, tweeted this, in part, quote, breaking. Trump raised tariffs on the world, the markets, particularly the bond market, which we need to finance our debt. They rebelled. Trump then was forced to back off. End of story. Film at 11 of the president spinning this as a major victory. What we have seen is a little lesson on how markets exert their power. How, when you have to depend on them, as we still do, you can't go to trade war with the world without bad stuff happening, end quote. Again, that was from Fox News. And there is, of course, still uncertainty and more of it ahead, whether the U.S. and China will strike an agreement or whether they won't. And businesses could once again face a tariff rate of 145%. All of that remains to be seen and worked out. Even this temporary relief may cause new problems and have unintended new consequences. New York Times reports this, quote, businesses will likely encounter a flood of pent-up demand, leading to soaring transport prices as companies race to schedule shipments during the 90-day negotiating window to take advantage of the lower tariff rate. The impacts are likely to show up at what has been the front line of Donald Trump's trade war with China, our nation's ports. That is why we start there today with my friend and colleague, NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff. He has exclusive access to the port of Long Beach, part of the country's largest port complex. Jacob, take it away.
Nicole, good afternoon to you. I'm out here in the middle of Long Beach Harbor with Mario Cordero, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach, along with the Port of Los Angeles, as you know, because I know you've talked to Mario quite a bit. It is the largest port complex by volume in the United States of America. It is critical to our nation's economy. And you use the word uncertainty. That's sort of the name of the game here right now. It is an extraordinary experience to be out here. You're looking at a drone shot as well that's flying live over us here on this Long Beach Harbor Patrol boat at the Port of Long Beach at a time when there should be multiple vessels here from China in order to bring those shipments in and get them out across the United States of America. And that's where we're going to start, Mario. How many boats are right now in Long Beach Harbor at the Port of Long Beach?
Well, right now, there's maybe about 3 or 4. I mean, you're looking at 2 major terminals here. We have at one terminal, 1 vessel, and another major terminal, we have 0. So we have 6 terminals, so right now it's very few vessels.
I think that the point that I want to stress with you and to our viewers is that just because we're in a 90-day pause, are we out of the woods yet?
No, I mean, progress is being made, for sure. On the other hand, if you're in a business sectors or a shipper, there's still a lot of uncertainty. What happens after 90 days? What happens on July 8th when the reciprocal tariffs on the other countries, that pause expires? So again, while there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel, there's still uncertainty here, and here you can just view it for yourself here in this complex.
Nicole, what you're looking at on the left-hand side of your screen is an aerial picture of the Port of Long Beach. We're the little dot in the middle of it, and those cranes that are standing there should normally on a day like today, even in the times before this announcement, be humming basically with activity, Mario. Explain how it works. There's a cargo ship right there. That one comes, did you say, from Sweden?
No, it's a company based out of Sweden, but it comes from China.
Okay, so that one comes out of China. Normally what you'd be seeing on a ship like that is those kind of ships stacked up here in the port. What are those cranes normally doing at a time like this?
So normally you would have 3 vessels there operating day and night, so to speak. So those cranes would be moving.
Around the clock?
Essentially around the clock when you're talking about ship to shore.
I've heard you talk before about sort of the calculation, the equation that converts the number of cargo containers on a ship like this into American jobs. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. Like, for example, at the Port of Long Beach, there's about 2.7 million jobs that are directly or indirectly from these operations.
2.7 million jobs.
2.7 million. In the state of California, that is 1.1 million. So at the state level, if there's a 10% reduction in cargo, there's a 10% reduction in jobs. And at the state level, that's 100,000 jobs.
You might remember, Nicole, that during COVID, we were out here and we were talking about how there were ships stacked up. How many, Mario, out into the Pacific Ocean waiting to get in here?
That was 109 vessels back in the spring of 2021.
109 vessels, the size of the one that we're about to approach here, Nicole, in Long Beach Harbor, that were stacked up in the port because there was so much demand for product after this port shut down entirely that there weren't enough terminals to bring in the ships to get the cargo across the country in order to actually move that product across the United States. Is there a scenario, Mario, because things have been frozen here and throughout these 90 days that you're going to see a similar type of stacking, that this process will grind to a halt even though the tariffs have been removed?
We may not see a scenario like we saw in the spring of 2021. However, there is a surge coming because a lot of shippers were not bringing their cargo here to the West Coast from China because they didn't want to be subject to a 145% tax.
We're only going down now to a 30%. I say only. We're going down now to a 30% tariff. It was well above 100%. A 30% tariff. Mario, you're the CEO of this place. Will it continue to affect operations here, even with that 30% tariff in place?
Well, I believe the 30% tariff will continue to have an impact. We're going to hope to see whether these discussions continue to be fruitful, so even to lower that percentage. But don't forget the tax on the export market going back to China, or U.S. products going to China. Right now, China went from 125% to 10%, but nevertheless, for a mid or small shipper, that's a big difference for them.
Has President Trump ever been here?
No.
I wonder if he was watching right now, what you would want President Trump to know about sort of the way things are going here, given the tariffs that he put into place, and your biggest worry about the next 90 days and beyond going forward.
Well, the biggest worry is that if we don't have resolution in terms of certainty, there's not going to be any products on the shelf. We're approaching peak season, which annually is anywhere between July and August, when the back-to-school products come, holiday season. So I think if the president comes to the complex today, he's going to see berth space that's empty. And again, you're witnessing here, ordinarily we'd have 3 vessels at this terminal. Right now, we just have 1.
Berth space that's empty. That doesn't sound like a recipe for a humming American economy.
That's correct. I mean, the bottom line is 2/3 of our economy is based on consumer spending, and what comes in here is what consumers spend on.
Nicole, I can't tell you how striking it is to approach a ship like this. You understand the volume of trade that comes into this country every single day. How many stories tall is this, Mario?
Well, those vessels are huge. I mean, some of them are 3 sides in terms of length of a football field. In terms of high, the containers are stacked up there. You see significant number, like that I think might be a 12,000 TEU, which is a smaller vessel. Ordinarily you have 14,
That's a
16.
smaller vessel.
Right.
To watch these, Nicole, cargo containers unloaded in a process that's run by union labor, International Longshore Workers Union, it really is a spectacular thing to see. But to know how impacted this place is, how slow the operations are moving here. Earlier, Nicole, Mario called it a COVID-level event. Other than that, I don't think we've seen this place in a crisis of this magnitude, Nicole.
Jacob, I wonder if you could ask Mario. Last time I talked to him, he told us that through Long Beach Port, there are goods that go to every congressional district in this country. And I wonder if you can ask him if he has any sense of how many of the businesses in this country can endure the instability, whether it's a complete slowdown like you're seeing today or a complete surge like what is expected when the tariffs drop from 145 to 30?
Nicole, Mario can hear you. Go ahead, Mario.
So there's, Nicole, there's about 300 billion of cargo value that comes to this port. That gives you an indication of the magnitude of the cargo. In terms of the cargo, where it goes from here, as I indicated previously, every congressional district in the mainland has cargo from the Port of Long Beach. And I think the big concern is for the average shipper, which is a mid-size or a small shipper, they're taking the real hit with regard to the cost they put out in terms of their deposit to book the cargo and the cost that they're looking to pay the tax on that cargo.
Look, Nicole, if I could just jump in real quick, look at the size of this thing. And one of the things I want everybody at home to understand is the products that are on that ship are the products that enter all of our homes every single day. Mario, what are some of the things that you're talking about with Nicole that are going to be felt across the country? What are some of the products, the goods, the services that come through this port that are not going to make their way to these congressional districts across the country?
Well, as we prepare for the holiday season, I'm talking about the peak season, July, toys. 80% of the toys are manufactured in China and come through this port. So 20% of refrigerators that we have here in the USA come through this port, computers and so forth. So it's a significant number of consumer goods and durable goods in terms for business sectors. So the magnitude of what we see here is, again, enormous. And this is why you see here, you're in the largest container port gateway in the country.